This has been a hell of a month. This has been a very stressful month. I mentioned last month I had builders coming in to do my bathroom, and the first day of the job they found under the floorboards the joists were all like rotted away, and that it was only a matter of time before the entire bathroom would crash through the floor into the kitchen, and either I'd be in the bathroom and fall through, or I'd be in the kitchen and be crushed and killed. So they had to rip all that out. They rip out the entire bathroom floor and the kitchen ceiling. It was one big room for a couple of days. And then to rebuild all that, to rebuild the wall in the kitchen, because that had to come out to get the joists in. So what was supposed to be a 1 week job where I could stay in the house became a 4 week job, and I've had to move back in with my parents. And during that time I had a broken tooth I had to get fixed. I had a horrible ear infection that still to this day persists. I only have one headphone in. It seems to be resistant to medicine. I don't know what's going on. I've got like a mutant X-Men ear. So it's been a very eventful, very shitty month. But, I watched some good films and TV shows. That was one bright spot. Not as much as I normally would, because I've been sharing a TV with 3 other people, which usually isn't the case. But still managed to watch a lot of good stuff. So let's get into it. Lost. Been continuing to rewatch Lost. I'm up to the very end of season 3 now. I'm on the season 3 finale with Not Penny's boat and all that stuff. And it's really in full swing now. Like the conflict with the others has started, and we've got the full scope of just how big the island is and how many other people are already on it, and that there's a second island. It's just a really good show. Some of the flashback stuff with some of the main characters starts to get a bit repetitive, where you've got like 5 episodes where the flashbacks are all about Charlie's contentious relationship with his brother, which is so... I didn't even realize the first time I watched it, but that's so obviously based on Oasis, because they're a Mancunian band, and his brother is Liam, and they constantly have conflicts. And there's so many episodes about his brother being a dick to him and him being a drug addict, and at a certain point, like, I get it. But then they also bring in new characters, Juliet and Ben, and they get lots of flashback episodes, and it starts to feel like, well, now are you neglecting the main characters? But then when they do give the main characters a flashback episode, it's like Jack has a whole episode about the origin story of his tattoos, which who gives a fuck? But having said that, there's some really good episodes. The one about Nikki and Paolo. I remember the first time I watched that being like, who gives a shit about Nikki and Paolo? This is such filler, fuck this. But that ended up being one of the best episodes, because it builds to such a great twist ending. I won't spoil what it is in case anyone hasn't seen the show. They've only had 20 years to watch it. But that whole episode, you started thinking, oh, this is filler, this is bullshit, I don't care about Nikki and Paolo. And it ends up being one of the absolute best episodes. But after season 3, I think you get into the second half. That's when it starts to get really weird with time travel and stuff. And they've introduced the notion of flash forwards, where they're off the island, but they need to go back. So, I don't know. I'll have more updates on Lost next month. Apartment 7A. I went into this with an open mind, because I really liked The First Omen earlier this year. And that seemed like an unnecessary prequel to a classic horror film. Although I do much, much prefer, Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite horror films, whereas The Omen I've always thought is kind of overrated. And this just wasn't good. Julia Garner's a fantastic actor. I loved her in Ozark, and she was great in this as it's like the backstory of Terry, the woman who was staying with Minnie and Roman Castevet before they turned their sights on Rosemary. And it's implied she was originally the target of the cult they wanted to impregnate with the Antichrist, and she dies mysteriously in the film. You're not really sure, did she kill herself, or did Minnie and Roman push her out the window? And this film kind of explains that. And that ending that actually explains how she died was pretty cool. It was kind of shocking, even though you know what's going to happen, you don't see it coming. But on the whole, it was just a really, really lesser version of Rosemary's Baby, where like the impregnation scene in Rosemary's Baby is so disturbing. You see like the eyes of the demon and all these things. It's really horrific. And in this, you see the demon, and it looks like a disco ball. It's like glittery, and it's just not scary in the slightest. I actually laughed out loud when I saw it. So this was not good. Great lead actor, great ending. Although you know what's gonna happen. And Diane Wiest plays Minnie, and Ruth Gordon played the accent, the cloyingness of the accent, right up to the line of it being unbearable. But Ruth Gordon pulled it off, whereas Diane Wiest in this is just insufferable. It's just such a grating accent that I actually almost turned off the film every time she was on screen. I couldn't bear it. Futurama season 9 or 12 or whatever it is, the new one on Hulu/Disney Plus. Finished this. There was only a couple of episodes left anyway, but I actually liked there was like an anthology episode, and on the subreddit it seems like they don't like those. But I like them. I like the one. It was like three different animation styles of different detective type stories. Like I think there was like a Nancy Drew segment, and there was a Tintin segment. And the Tintin segment I really liked because I'm a big Tintin fan. But yeah, I really dug that one. That seemed to be one of the least well received ones based on the Reddit pages. But I liked it. The Batman. Me and my dad rewatched this one night, and it's so good. It's so long-winded, and the plot is like needlessly convoluted. Because like everything's so simplistic. Like the riddles are so simplistic, and El Rata Alada, and who's the rat? Oh, it's really Carmine Falcone. Oh my goodness. You know, that's all very simple, but it's dragged out as if it's like the most complex detective story ever told. But I just feel like this movie captures the essence of Batman maybe better than any other film. Previously I would have said the ultimate Batman film was The Dark Knight, but The Dark Knight doesn't really dig into the comic booky elements. Whereas The Batman is like a comic booky take, but in a grounded way, but it's still, you know, it's the more grounded you make a guy dressing up as a bat to fight crime, the more ridiculous that seems. Because it's not realistic. So if you try and make it realistic, you just highlight how unrealistic that premise is. But just like the cinematography, Greg Fraser's cinematography and Michael Giacchino's score creates such an immersive atmosphere that like I don't mind that it spends 3 hours dragging out a 90-minute plot, because I just love being immersed in that like gloomy, rainy vision of Gotham that Matt Reeves and his whole team like brought to life in such a beautiful way. And all the Hitchcockian stuff with like the voyeuristic POV shots and you know, making Catwoman this like tragic femme fatale, like Faye Dunaway in Chinatown, or Jane Fonda in Clute or something like that. I just love that it's like a 70s style Batman film. And Robert Pattinson, I love his Bruce Wayne, because I feel like everyone else has played him as like the bombastic playboy, whereas Robert Pattinson plays him as like the very disturbed, very lonely, very anxious, very socially awkward guy, which I find more relatable than the playboy. I still haven't seen the Penguin series. I need to get around to watching that. It's supposed to be really good. But maybe when I'm back in my own space with my own TV, I'll get around to it. Modern Family. We've binge watched pretty much the whole series. In fact, we've binge watched the whole series beginning to end, because Modern Family is one of the only shows that all four of us can kind of agree on, that we all like. And it's just like the perfect sitcom. It's got like great writing and a great cast where they all have great chemistry and you fully believe the relationships and that they're a real family and stuff. And all such good comic timing and like perfectly attuned to each other's timing. And you know, it's amazing to me that like within a 22-minute or 21-minute episode, the writers are able to get in a full story and a full arc for every single character. There's like 18 main characters. And it's like for the first say 5 or 6 seasons, maybe push to 7, it's like one of the best comedies ever made. It's like so sharply written and great acting and relatable, and like the tone is so feel good and wholesome, and you know, it just has this warm, cozy comfort show kind of feeling. And then it gets into, say, season 9, 10, 11, towards the end, and all the kids have grown up, and they kind of didn't know what to do with any of those characters once they were grown up. But the show is such a huge hit and such a big money generator that the network isn't like, well, let's just end it. They're like, no, keep going. Run this into the ground. And it's still good by the end. It's, you know, it never got terrible or unwatchable like some sitcoms do. 2.5 Men did. But it's nowhere near as good as it once was. And they just don't know what to do with those kids once they grow up. And where you once had this nice balance of like the adults doing stuff and the kid humor, now there's no room for kid humor anymore. It's like it all rests on Joe. He's like the only kid left, so he's relied on entirely for all the kid humor, which used to make up like 50% of the show. So it just didn't work as well once they were all adults and getting jobs, and then it just becomes Friends. It's a bunch of adults with jobs. Joker, Folie, Deux. I did a review of this, so if you want to know my full thoughts, I've got the review up there. But I actually really liked this film. A lot of people didn't. Certainly fans of the first one didn't. And then anyone who wasn't a fan of the first one probably wouldn't bother to watch it. It looks like from the box office numbers, no one bothered to watch it. Even people who hate it seem to be basing their opinions on other people's opinions. I don't think they actually watched it. But I got a lot of thumbs downs. Previously, like my biggest ratio of thumbs downs was when I gave The Marvels a positive review, because I really liked that too. And that was something like 40% thumbs up to 60% thumbs down. But with Joker Folie, it's like 30% thumbs up to 70% thumbs down. People did not agree with me at all that it's good. But I enjoyed it. I mean, Lady Gaga was fantastic. Her musical numbers were like really enrapturing, and I kind of like that it interrogates the first film and the different responses to it. Even though, you know, if you make a sequel criticizing people for having misinterpreted the first film, if you claim that like 2 totally different sections of the audience misinterpreted it. Maybe it's your fault as director that you didn't convey your message well enough if no one got it right. But yeah, I liked it more than the first one. Got some really hateful comments. But you know, it's all part of the discourse, it's all part of the discussion. Boy Kills World. This was like one of my favorite trailers I've seen this year. It came out in like March, and my cinema never showed it. My local cinema never showed it, so I couldn't watch it on a big screen, so I had to wait for it to come on streaming. And it doesn't quite live up to like the all-out carnage promised by the trailer. The trailer made it look like, you know, it has the energy of Goodfellas, and it moves all over the place, and it's all action, and it's, you know, like this really dark, bloody satire where there's like breakfast cereal mascots sponsoring like murder on live television, and that stuff is in there, but that's like 10 minutes of the film in the middle. You know, it's more or less like a John Wick ripoff. But there's the gimmick that he can't speak, and all of his inner monologue is done by Bob Belcher, or, you know, H. John Benjamin. And frankly, that gimmick was enough to carry the entire film for me. I really got a kick out of that voiceover, and, you know, Bill Skarsgård really went all in with the violence and the stunts and stuff and the action. It wasn't quite as mind-blowing as I hoped it would be, or even really as much fun as I hoped it would be, but, you know, it was an entertaining ride, and some of the violence was crazy. I was watching it with the whole family, and my sister and my mom were horrified by some of the violence, because there's a lot of, like, gratuitous shots of knives going into flesh and cutting things open, and bones being broken and bent the wrong way and stuff, but I'm kind of desensitized to all that stuff, and I kind of got a kick out of it. Broad City. This come up in a few of these Everything I Watch videos, because every few months I'll just rewatch Broad City. I don't think I did the whole series this time, but I watched a couple of seasons of it. And this is another one that's like Modern Family. It's like a warm blanket. It's like a comfort show, because you just love hanging out with these characters. And like, obviously Abby and Lana are the anchors of the show, but Lincoln as well, and Jaime, and Bevers. Obviously Bevers is like such an unbearable character, but he's like weirdly lovable in his own way, and just so funny and so accurate to like the worst person you can imagine having to live with. So yeah, that's another one I'll never get enough of. Peep Show. Me and my dad and my mom all watched this. We binge watched this together, and it was I don't know, it probably would be on the list of like shows to not watch with your parents, because it's so there's so much cringe humor and so much like raunchy stuff, but I don't know, I think it's all because it's supposed to be uncomfortable. It kind of works that way. It kind of works to watch something that's supposed to be uncomfortable. You know, you're all just laughing at the discomfort. It draws attention to it. It's not like watching Game of Thrones with your parents and you're just looking at tits, you know. Like with Peep Show, the discomfort is intentional, so it's part of the entertainment of it. But just such a good show, and it's been paying dividends to me, because that's one of my most watched videos. Is what makes Peep Show the best British sitcom. You know, that one consistently gets more views even than like the brand new videos, because I think a lot of people agree it is the best. It's so fun, it's so ridiculously funny, and the laugh rate is insane, and it never had a downturn. I mean, it gets a little bit more cartoonish in its last couple of seasons, a little bit less grounded and realistic, but it's still really, really funny, you know, and they ended it way before it would have gone way off the rails. And it kind of comes full circle that, like, no matter what Mark and Jez do to try and break away from each other and find happiness elsewhere, they're in such a toxic cycle, and whoever is absorbed into their lives ends up worse off for it, that they're doomed to just spend eternity stuck with each other, which is, you know, kind of a beautifully, hilariously poetic way to end the story. Sorry to bother you. This has popped up on I did a video about like the best recent comedies, or why there haven't been many great comedies recently, and it was the first half of the video, and then the second half is recommended a bunch of great ones I've seen recently. And this one came out like 5 or 6 years ago. It was one of the least recent of the good recent comedies. But it's kind of amazing. It's you know, anti-capitalist satire by Boots Riley. Where this guy, played by Lakeith Stanfield, is kind of like strapped for cash and needs a job, and he gets a job at a call center and starts using his white voice on the phone and starts making a lot of sales and climbing the corporate ladder. And meanwhile, all his friends are unionizing because he's got his foot on the ladder. He doesn't want to jeopardize that, so he starts to side with management over his friends, and kind of just becomes this interesting look at like how the system of capitalism keeps the little guy down. And even when a little guy manages to get up to the big leagues, they make him turn against all his little guy friends, you know. And then like halfway through, it takes a really, really wild turn, which I won't spoil because it's the best thing in the world to not have spoiled. And I've loved like showing the film to people who don't know what's coming and seeing their reaction to like that twist. Although it didn't really work this time because my dad kept falling asleep. So I think he missed a lot of the big twists and turns, but so at the end I had to explain what happened to him, which lessens the impact a bit, but it's a really good film. Young Frankenstein. They were showing this at the cinema for, I think, the 40th or maybe 50th anniversary, I think, 1974. And so me and my dad went down, and he actually he was on call for work, so he kept getting called out. So he had to go out into the corridor and answer his phone. It was funny because if the film was silent, we could hear his phone call. But I managed to watch the whole thing, and you know, just watching it with a crowd and laughing along with the crowd, which I've never had. I've seen the film a few times, and always thought it was really funny, but you get a new appreciation when you watch it with an audience. You know, it's the scene where the monster's grabbed Gene Wilder by the neck and he's dragging him around, and he's trying to do like charades for like sedative, give him the sedative, so he'll stop choking me. Or the putting on the Ritz scene, that's like one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And like cinematography wise and production design wise, it actually looks like an old Universal monster movie. You know, it looks like the real deal. It has that kind of grainy black and white aesthetic, and I think maybe even Mel Brooks had gotten a hold of all the old props of like the Tesla coil and stuff that they actually used in the old like James Whale version. So that's really cool. It just looks legit. On top of being like a ridiculous spoof of them, it like looks like the real deal. Blockers. I think Blockers may have been the first film I mentioned in my first ever one of these Everything I Watched videos. And back then, I lent the DVD to my family and said, "You'll like this, it's funny." And over a year later, I had to come and live with them for them to actually watch it. But yeah, me and my sister ordered a Domino's and we watched it, and it's so good. This was another one that came up on my, Where Have All the Good Comedies Gone video as one of the best recent ones. And this is also one of the least recent ones that came out a few years ago, around the same time as Sorry to Bother You. But it's just like, from the premise, I think that's why they hadn't watched it, because the premise makes it sound like it's going to be really, really raunchy and really NSFW. But at its core, it's a really sweet story, just about these like parents who are worried about becoming empty nesters and worried about their kids moving out and worried about their kids growing up. That's more what it's about. It's not about we must stop our daughters from becoming sexually active, although that's what the actual goal of the film is. It's more like we got to stop them from growing up. We got to stop our little kids from growing up. And through that shared insecurity, they kind of like find a kinship with each other and become good friends. So it's like, seems like it'll be like a Porky's sex comedy, but it's actually a really sweet movie, but also really funny and really raunchy. Ike Barinholtz. I've always liked Ike Barinholtz, but this film gave me like a whole new appreciation for him. And John Cena too, because this was before he's done a ton of comedies recently, but I watched this before I'd seen all that stuff. And he's so funny. And he just like throws himself into a joke and doesn't mind like looking ridiculous. That's something a lot of these guys, when they do comedies, like Dwayne Johnson will do a comedy like Red Notice and be like, I'm always going to be in on the joke, or the joke is going to be about how handsome I am and how big my muscles are. Whereas with John Cena, he's like, I'll be the butt of the joke. I'll throw myself into that. I don't mind. South Park. Weirdly, as well as Modern Family, like South Park's like the only other show all four of us can agree on that we all like. And it's another one that you'd think it's awkward to like watch with your parents, but I don't know. We've all been watching South Park together like since me and my sister were little kids, so it's almost like it doesn't even register anymore as something that would be awkward to watch with your parents, because it's just been a welcome thing in the house forever. But it's such a good show, and it's recently most of the episodes are about like what's in the news this week. But you go back to like season 7 or season 8, you get episodes like Margarine, where they send Butters in undercover as a girl to a slumber party to try and get what they think is a future telling device, but it's really just one of those things that you've folded paper and you pick a number and a color and it tells you like you're gonna get married before you're 30 or something. That's just a great story about those characters. It's not about what's in the news. It's not about current events or it's just what's something that these crazy kids can do. It's what's inside. This came on Netflix recently and came highly recommended. And it's a really like kind of mind-blowing film. It starts off kind of like Bodies, where it's a load of friends at a party. In this case, it's like the night before a wedding, and it's all these friends who haven't seen each other in a while getting back together and catching up and stuff. And then it takes a dark horror turn when they start playing a party game. But in this case, it's their old friend who none of them have seen for ages since a big falling out shows up with this briefcase. And it's got this like body swap technology that he's been working on. And the game is that everyone swaps bodies and everyone has to try and guess who's in their body. And that becomes a way for everyone's the home truths and all the betrayals between them all start spilling out. And people are lying about whose body they're in, and other people are in a body that they want to keep because it's like, well, my boyfriend always liked this girl more than me, so I'm going to stay in her body so I can keep him. It's a really clever, really bonkers movie. The direction was really like stylish and like frenetic and all over the place and energetic, but not in a way that was confusing, although it was kind of hard to follow who's in whose bodies all the time. But they had a really cool visual way of showing it, where they would change the colors to show this is the person, and then go back to regular colors and be like, that's whose body they're in. It had a great soundtrack, great cast. You know, all the actors really had a ton of fun, like playing each other as they start swapping bodies. And I feel like maybe the first act could have spent a bit of a longer time for you to get to know the characters before they all start swapping bodies, because that's kind of key. You need to know who everyone is before they start jumping around. But I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of really cool twists in it that kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. And it's crazy, but it's a really interesting execution of a really interesting premise. For a good time call, this is Lauren Miller, Seth Rogen's wife, and Ari Graynor, or Grainer, not quite sure how I pronounce her name, but she's been in a ton of stuff. She was in The Sitter with Jonah Hill. She's been in a few things. It was just this like little low-budget kind of indie comedy about these two friends who start a phone sex business. And I think it was based on like their real experiences, or at least Lauren Miller's real experiences, because she co-wrote the script. And so you get this interesting insight into what it's like to run a phone sex line, which I would have no idea about. But it also is just about these two friends, and they, you know, at the beginning they hate each other because they've only met once, and they had a horrible time together. But then when Lauren Miller's kicked out of her apartment, she needs a place to live. She moves in with her, and then they're kind of like forced begrudgingly to become friends. But then they do become best friends. And, you know, it follows the classic Seth Rogen formula where they're friends and then they fall out and then they become friends again by the end. I really thought it was like the perfect culmination of the script when they become friends again, and Lauren Miller's running home to see her friend, and she calls her and she's saying like, you know, I'm coming, I'm so close, please let me inside, and all this stuff that is like double entendre for like she is coming back to the apartment to see her friend and she wants to come inside, but it's all this like sexual language that you would use in phone sex. So it was like this perfect bringing together of like this storyline of these two friends and also like the subject matter of phone sex. I thought it was a really ingenious way to end the script. But yeah, it was really good. They were great in it, and it was just a really, really enjoyable comedy. Challenges. I missed Challenges in cinemas, and I was waiting for it to come on streaming. And I thought it would come on Prime pretty quickly because it was an Amazon production. But then it came on Prime, you had to buy it, and it took forever for it to be available just to Prime subscribers. But finally it came on, so I watched it, and it's really good. It took me a while to get my head around the non-linear structure, because you know, there's the whole present day thing where the two guys who are both in love with Zendaya are competing against each other in a tennis match, and she's watching. Then it cuts back to like how they met, and how each one of them had different relationships with her at different times, and one of them ended up marrying her and having a kid with her, and the other one still loves her, and you know, it's going back years and years, but the actors all look exactly the same no matter when it's set. So it took a while for me to realize, oh, this is in the past, and this is back to the present, and now we're back in the past. But once I got the hang of that, it went quite smoothly. And they do put on like years on the screen to tell you that, but I thought it was hard to keep track of at first, but I really enjoyed it. Really steamy, you know, really sexy. And you know, there was some complaints about like a CGI ball in tennis scenes, which I didn't really pick up on. I didn't really bump into. The only thing was, there's a couple of shots like from the point of view of the ball, which is just disorienting and kind of gimmicky, but you know, not enough to like tarnish the overall film, because there's only a couple of shots. And the actors were incredible. Zendaya's incredible, and Mike Feist, I think his name is, the guy from Spielberg's West Side Story. I thought he was one of the standouts in that, and he was great in this. And Josh O'Connor, I think, is the other guy. He was great too, as like the spurned ex-lover who wants to get back with her. It's just an all-round great movie. It was a great script. Once I got the hang of the structure of it, it was a great script, and the actors brought the characters to life spectacularly. And Luca Guadagnino, the director, you know, directed it with a lot of energy and a lot of verve, but not so much that it's like too much. You know, it's the romance has enough room to breathe, and each scene has enough room to breathe. I thought it was great. It was a very well made movie. Jackpot. Speaking of the recent John Cena comedies, this was one he did a couple of months ago with Awkwafina, where it's in a world where, very near future, where when someone wins the lottery in California, it's legal to kill them. It's legal to kill them for their winnings before sundown. And Awkwafina accidentally gets a hold of someone else's ticket and wins it, and John Cena's like a lottery bodyguard who like keeps her safe in exchange for some of her winnings. And they, you know, I think it got really bad reviews, and I think a lot of them were complaining that it doesn't say enough about the economy. But it's not really about the economy. That's just a premise to set up an action comedy, you know. And Awkwafina and John Cena have this really interesting kind of dynamic in it where they bounce off each other really well. They have they're like very well matched comedically. And so it's just fun to see. Like the action sequences are really cool, and there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of people trying to kill her, and John Cena's beating them all up, and meanwhile they're having all this banter and they're bickering with each other, and it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So, you know, which is why I watched it the second time so quickly. It's just a fun movie. Bob's Burgers. There's another one all four of us can agree on. There's 3 shows. It's Modern Family, South Park, and Bob's Burgers. I mean, there's other stuff, like I'm Alan Partridge, but there's not hundreds of episodes of that to binge watch over and over again. But yeah, Bob's Burgers, we've been binging since we finished Modern Family. And it's another one that's just like wholesome, feel-good, like a warm blanket, like a cozy comfort show. It's refreshing to see. You see so many shows like The Simpsons or Family Guy where the dad is like an alcoholic and neglects the kids, and the mom is left to do all the housework and doesn't really love the dad anymore, and they have like a rocky marriage, and the kids are always fighting each other and arguing with each other, and it's just nice to see a show where the parents love each other and they're very supportive of the kids, and they split the housework 50-50, and that's not an issue, and the kids are all friends. They get along. It's never, you know, the kids never argue in Bob's Burgers. They all just hang out. They hang out with each other's friends and with each other, and you know, when they're at school they all eat lunch together and stuff, and go on adventures together. It's just nice to see, especially because like almost no other family sitcom does that. And Teddy, I love Teddy. Teddy might be my favorite character. I've read somewhere that like some people don't like Teddy or they find him annoying or something, but I think he's the funniest character. He's like, every time he's on screen I'm laughing. Alan Partridge, Alpha Papa. This was, me and my parents got a Chinese the other night and we watched Alpha Papa. It's just so good. It's like, it changes the Alan Partridge character slightly just to fit into the context of like a movie. And it's much more heightened than anything else Alan Partridge has ever been a part of. You know, where normally like the highest stakes conflict in an Alan Partridge thing is he said something controversial on the air, or he's going down to the BP garage to get some tungsten tip screws because he's lonely and bored. But in Alpha Papa, it's like he's the mediator between the police and the disgruntled employee who come back to the radio station with a shotgun and held everyone hostage. But it's kind of funny to see Alan Partridge in like a Die Hard McClane situation. It's just a really funny movie. I mean, it's really dark at times because you have people with like a gun held in their face and stuff. But dark humor has always been a part of the Alan Partridge thing. And, you know, this is just a great example of a dark comedy. And I can't believe it's been over a decade. I mean, I remember going to the cinema to watch it when I was like 15 and loving it. But I expected that to, you know, shortly thereafter they announced we're going to do a sequel. We're going to do another Alan Partridge film. And it's been over 10 years and they haven't. So where is it? American Psycho. They announced they're doing an American Psycho remake or readaptation of the book by, funnily enough, by Challenger's director Luca Guadagnino. And I'm sure he'll do a fine job, you know, he'll do an interesting movie with it, but, you know, as soon as it was announced, it was like, there's almost every time they announce a remake, it's like, this is pointless. But this one really is pointless, because they already made the best movie you could possibly make out of that book. It's not like the book is tailor-made for a film. They had to really work it into a film to get it right the first time. And you're never going to find a more iconic Patrick Bateman than Christian Bale. That's like such a incredible performance that it's like mesmerizing, and it's like he is crazy and violent, and you believe it, and you believe he's a killer, but you also believe when he's just like laughing it up with his buddies in the boardroom or at the restaurant. But there's also this glint behind his eye that like maybe he can't be trusted, maybe he will kill someone. You know, you're never going to find an actor who's going to do that as well as he did, you know, without getting someone to just copy what he did, in which case it would be derivative and it wouldn't blow you away like his original performance did. And it's a rare case of a film that like still holds up today, probably more so than it did then. It was kind of ahead of its time, so they probably should just re-release the Christian Bale version. You don't need to make a new version. But whatever, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that Luca has a vision for it and he's going to do something cool with it, because I did like Challenges and I liked Bones and All, although it was a very bad idea for a date movie. But I really liked it, and I loved Call Me By Your Name. I didn't like his Suspiria remake, but on the whole, I've really liked his films. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I really don't think you can improve on this. So that's why I rewatched the original. The original I hadn't seen in years. because it's kind of been ruined by the "you missed the point by idolizing him" crowd. But it's so good. The way it toes the line between is it real? Is it in his head? Did the guy really have dinner with Paul Allen, or is he mixing him up? Because he always mixes people up. It's just a great film. I had a really uncomfortable time watching it though, because my mum came in as I was watching it, and I said, "Okay, do you want me to turn this off and change the channel?" And she had some food. She said, "No, I'm just going to eat this, and I'll get out of your hair." But then she finished eating her food and just stuck around for like half an hour. She stuck around through the threesome scene, which was a deeply uncomfortable experience for me. And the whole time I'm like, when are you gonna fucking leave? You said you would eat your thing and go. And I said I would turn this off if you were gonna stick around. But apart from that, a bit of discomfort. It's a really good film. Woman of the Hour. There's another new film on Netflix, directorial debut of Anna Kendrick, who also stars in it. It's a true story of a woman in the 70s who went on the dating game, like a dating reality show, where you ask questions to 3 bachelors behind a curtain and pick one. And somehow one of these bachelors was like a serial killer no one had caught. And she ended up picking him to go on the date with. I thought it was really good. It's really well directed. And, I've seen a lot of people say they were disappointed by it, or I don't get the hype. But then they say, because I was expecting a thriller, or, and it's like, well, if you go in expecting something, then you're going to be disappointed by what it isn't. And that's already been an issue with Marvel, where it's like, oh, I didn't like Multiverse of Madness because I wanted Deadpool to be in it, or I wanted it to go to 800 universes. It only really goes to 3. But it's like, well, why don't you just let the film be what it is? And then decide what you think of that, instead of being like, it's got to be this thing in my head, and then when it isn't, I won't like it. And now that's spread to all films. Now it's like, I've decided what I want Woman of the Hour to be, and now when it's not that, well, fuck it. I saw someone say it would have been better if you'd gone in from Cheryl Bradshaw's perspective, and you, at the same rate as her, start to figure out something's a bit off about Bachelor number 3. But there's no way they could have hidden that, because it's a true story. If it was a fictional story, you could hide that. Because it's a true story, everyone goes in knowing he's a serial killer. And even if you didn't know the story before the film came out, that would be all the talk about the film. Oh, it's this true story of the serial killer who went on the dating game. And if you don't have that hook to market it with, then it's just the story of a woman who goes on a dating show, which no one's gonna fucking watch. So you have to go the other way and just lean into, he's a serial killer. When is she gonna find out? So it opens with him killing someone, and you see what his MO is. He's a photographer, and he promises women, I'm gonna kickstart your modeling career. Let's go out to this great location in the middle of the desert that I know, and I'll take pictures of you there. Oh, and by the way, I'll also kill you there. And so the whole story of Cheryl going on the dating game and talking to this guy is intercut with vignettes of his various murders. And I felt like that did a great job of building tension, because then it's like, well, when is she going to find out? How far into this is she going to go? She's agreed to go away with this guy. Is it going to go that far? Is she going to get that far? So I feel like that in itself built a lot of suspense. And the acting was incredible. I can't remember who the guy is who played the serial killer, but he was great at just being creepy and unnerving. I think it was Autumn Best plays the would-be victim who manages to turn him in. And she's great. She's like, Anna Kendrick is the star of the movie, but she's the hero of the movie. She's great. And Pete Holmes, it was nice to see. I always love seeing Pete Holmes in anything. He showed up as her, like, Anna Kendrick's neighbor, who's a fellow actor. He popped up in that Ed Helms film Family Switch as well last Christmas. I just like seeing him pop up and stuff. But yeah, I feel like, as director Anna Kendrick, she's not just building tension and telling the story really well. She also kind of delivers an interesting message as well of, like, how people like Rodney Alcala go uncaught and unpunished and keep getting away to do murder after murder, because when women try and come forward and tell these stories, institutionally no one believes them. Because there's like a woman in the audience at the dating game who goes to her boyfriend and is like, I'm pretty sure Bachelor number 3 is the guy who killed my friend. And the boyfriend's like, nah, they must have a vetting process. No way they'd let a serial killer on the show. You must be crazy. And then she tries to tell the producers, and they send her to go and meet with, like the quote-unquote head of security, and it turns out she's been sent to meet the janitor or something. And it's like, if shit like that happens, then people like him keep getting away with it. And it's so frustrating, and the film captures that frustration really well. Beauty in Black. There's a new show on Netflix, Tyler Perry's show. It's like a soap opera kind of about class, contrasting the lives of a woman who's been kicked out of her house by her mom, and so she ends up working at like a strip club with a really seedy underbelly and gets mixed up with some bad dudes. As she's trying to like just scrape enough money to get by. And this other woman who's running a hair care empire, and she's trying to like hold her family together. And I mean, it's probably not something I ever would have chosen to watch, but I had to watch it for work. I had to write a couple of articles about it. I had to write season 1 ending explained, so I had to, and it ended up being, you know, it's not like the greatest show in the world, but it's an interesting, the parallel of these two stories, and it creates an interesting parallel between like the desperation of a poor person who's just desperate to make enough money to survive, and the desperation of like an ultra wealthy person who's desperate to hold on to her wealth. You know, that was an interesting thematic parallel. But the show itself, I mean, I was expecting like a typical soap opera. I'm expecting like Days of Our Lives or Coronation Street or something. But there's a lot of swearing and gun violence. It's like everything's like motherfucker this, motherfucker that, and you bitch, you fucking bitch, you hoe, fuck you, and all this. And every other person has a gun. They pull out a gun and shoot people down, and they pull out their gun and don't you try to fuck with me, motherfucker. You know, it's more like a Tarantino film than a soap opera. So I appreciated that. Nightmare Alley. I hadn't seen Nightmare Alley in a couple of years. I watched it like in cinemas when it came out, and then again when it popped up on Disney Plus. Because it's the kind of thing, because it ends with a big bombshell twist, it kind of demands a second viewing where you can, you watch it not knowing the twist and you get bowled away by the twist, and then you watch it again knowing the twist and you pick up on the hints and things and see where it was headed all along. And when you're in the hands of a good director like Guillermo del Toro, you know, those seeds are planted, and it's a whole different experience the second time. I mean, in the case of Nightmare Alley, the way the movie begins ties in with how it ends. It almost could play in a loop where you get to the ending and you could just start the film again and play it all over again. But yeah, I watched it again with my dad, and because he'd seen my video, every Guillermo del Toro movie ranked, and in that I'm raving about this twist and what an incredible ending it is and what an unforgettable ending it is. And my dad, even though he'd seen the film, is watching the video going like, "What was the twist? How did it end?" So we watched it again, and so it's a different experience for him because he gets to experience it for the first time all over again. But it's just a really well-made film. It's really brilliantly acted. You know, I know I gave Bradley Cooper a lot of flack for Maestro, but I think he's incredible in this. I think it's one of his best performances, along with like A Star Is Born and Licorice Pizza. And Cate Blanchett is great as the femme fatale, and Rooney Mara, I think it is kind of like the moral compass of the film, where it's like as Bradley Cooper descends into immorality as he does, you know, more and more ethically questionable things in pursuit of more and more money, she starts to be like, I think this is going a bit too far. Don't we have enough money yet? You can stop tricking people. And, you know, she was great in that role. And a lot of great, like, bit players almost, like Toni Collette as, like, a psychic, Ron Perlman as the strong man at the circus, at the carnival, Willem Dafoe as, like, the ringleader, who's kind of like a weird, fucked up father figure to Bradley Cooper. Richard Jenkins was really great because he has like a really warm, affable, kind presence, but the character he's playing is like humanity's worst monster who's done horrific things to young women. It's a really great film. I think it's one of Del Toro's best. I think I ranked it like third in the ranking of worst to best, behind like Pan's Labyrinth and Pinocchio. But I absolutely love it. So there you have everything I watched in October. Not quite as much as usual. But today, as I'm recording this, my bathroom's finally done, so tomorrow I'll get to move back in. My life can go back to normal. I think my ear is finally healing. My tooth, I got a filling, that's all sorted now. So this whole painful month can become a distant memory, and things can go back to normal. But what have you all been watching this month? Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations. I'm always on the lookout for new stuff to watch. Especially now I'm going to have more time to watch stuff again. And yeah, I'll speak to you in November. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.